Hello and welcome to the Specialist Perspectives interviews for European Power Strategy and Systems Development. Today we are joined by Giuseppe Montesano, who is presently the Deputy Director for the ENEL Foundation. Giuseppe has worked for ENEL since 1988, developing renewable energy projects, designing environmental and low-carbon strategies for the group, and advising on the regulatory matters. The ENEL Foundation is a non-profit organization focusing on the crucial role of clean energy to ensure a sustainable future for all. The organization also explores how human and natural capital is accelerating or shaping the energy transition process, especially in areas of the world mostly exposed to the challenges of climate change.
Hello, I'm very pleased to be here and thank you for your introduction, both of myself and of the ENEL Foundation.
Thank you so much. What is the ENEL Foundation, and can you give me details of major achievements?
As you said, the ENEL Foundation is a not-for-profit entity that is totally funded by ENEL, and I would say that we aim to act as a knowledge platform for the sustainable energy transition. We do this basically, first of all, by developing what we call strategic studies. These studies are generally developed in partnerships with other stakeholders, academic partners, but not only the academic partners. And another fundamental aspect of our activity is that all the results of our research, all the results of our strategic studies are aimed to be disseminated broadly. We accompany then these dissemination activities also with this study and dissemination activities, also with other activities that we call capacity building activities. As well, what you would generally refer to think tank-like activities. So now, in terms of achievements, I will offer a few examples of some of the most recent studies that we have produced. And the first one is a study on the benefits of integrating the development of variable renewables and interconnections in South America. And we have done this through a quite detailed modeling of the power systems. We have also produced some insights on new technologies that can facilitate further renewables penetration in power systems, like long duration, the so-called long duration energy storage. And another example that I think is quite significant is also a recent study that we have produced to offer some recommendations on how to deal with an energy transition that is also just. I mean by that how to make sure that the costs of the transition and as well as the benefits are fairly shared across the society. And now on this aspect, we are also deep diving more specifically on the so-called distributional effects of climate policies in Europe. So these examples just to show that we address various levels, the policy level, the technology level, and also the geographical level and differences across the globe.
Has the policy of implementing carbon pricing mechanisms, both carbon taxes and cap-and-trade schemes, led to positive means to mitigate climate change and support decarbonization policies? How can these policies address the issue of a just transition?
We have done a couple of pieces of studies on carbon pricing, and we have done this in partnership with very prominent academic institutions, namely with one with Harvard and one with Columbia. Well, there are a couple of considerations. First of all, the first one is that if we look at the implementation details of, for example, carbon taxes and cap and trade, In fact, the differences between the two categories fade. The merits of carbon pricing mechanisms depend a lot on practical implementation. For example, how revenues are recycled, if there are free allowances, the existence of price floors and price caps, just to mention some. What we have found is that adapting to the context and the characteristics of a jurisdiction is really essential for the acceptance and the effectiveness of carbon pricing mechanisms. What we have also found is that, all in all, empirically, an analysis of data across 37 jurisdictions shows, in any case, that these policies are very well placed to support decarbonization while balancing economic growth and the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. You mentioned the issue of just transition in relation to carbon pricing. On this, theoretically, carbon pricing alone can have what is called a regressive effect, meaning that it can place proportionally more burden on lower income people. But there are definitely countermeasures, such as policies that can be combined with a standalone, let's call it, carbon pricing policies. Counter policies such as making sure that there is revenue neutrality through a rebalancing of taxes, or a socially accepted use of proceeds from the mechanisms. All this can definitely mitigate and offset the regressive effects.
Electrification offers a wide range of solutions for mobility, as well as for sufficient energy consumption in buildings and industry. According to your research, what are the main challenges to be addressed in terms of technology and behavioral change?
One of the largest research that we have done in the recent past has been a detailed and comprehensive electrification scenario in Italy with 3 milestones, in one short term, 2022, another one which is mid-long term, 2030, and a longer term milestone at 2050. And with this scenario, which is, I would say, not even the most aggressive that you can envisage, that goes up to 46% of final uses coming from electricity in 2050, shows that this would be extremely beneficial from an environmental point of view, because you can get as much as almost 70% reductions of CO2 emissions. From a health perspective, because we have estimated that several hundred billion euros can be saved for reduced healthcare expenditure, for productivity, because of productivity recovery, and because also of human lives saved. And the third important benefit is that also in terms of affordability, we have estimated that up to 17% reduction in the share of household income will be devoted to energy if this electrification scenario is followed. Of course, this is due also to the fact that over 80% of power generation would come from renewables. In terms of consumption sectors, buildings and transport are those who show the largest potential. Industry is already quite highly electrified in Italy, but it can also further improve. So your question was about the challenges, and I would say that the first one is a price challenge. Electric technology alternatives are often penalized by the fact that electricity prices to final consumers are overburdened by taxes and levies, by policy costs that should be perhaps more appropriately allocated to general taxation. And the second one has to deal with awareness. And this, I mean, awareness of the benefits of electrification to be addressed with campaigns to the general public. And the second one is also awareness of the industrial opportunities, which can be addressed by facilitating, for example, by facilitating exchanges between research entities, business leaders, and institutions.
How is the ENEL Foundation working to increase awareness about a sustainable energy transition through the dissemination of its research and its education programs?
In terms of dissemination, we organized, as I said at the beginning, also think tank-like activities, workshops, and occasions online in this period. Unfortunately, occasions to discuss about the results of our research. But as you pointed out correctly, there is a very important component of our activities are our education programs, which are addressed to energy leaders, both senior and what you would call rising stars, and also to young students. They have a global reach geographically, but also in the sense that these education capacity building programs put together technical, economic, and policy expertise. I would mention as examples the two flagship programs that we have. The first one is on the analysis and management of energy and environmental policy, that is done in partnership with Harvard Kennedy School's Environmental Economics program. And this one is addressed mainly to energy leaders. The second one is called Open Africa Power, that we do in partnership with the Florence School of Regulation and several African and Italian universities. And this is aimed at empowering African students. These programs include teaching sessions, workshops, webinars, and all these are parts of fundamental parts of the programs, and also contribute to build a community of alumni that facilitates the interaction among them, also across the different education programs that we have.
Thank you very much for your insights, Giuseppe. Now, to close our interview, I'd like to do a little speculative long short session with you.
That's okay. Let's have fun.
Thanks. The majority of cars being electric by 2030 in Europe.
Well, the future of cars is electric. So I would say definitely long on the majority of car sales being electric in 2030. When you talk about overall car fleets, well, these suffer by relatively big inertia that is due to the relatively long life of vehicles. So maybe on the majority of cars, I would rather be short.
Nuclear power in Europe.
Now here, short, definitely. I really don't see any of the necessary technological developments to make it viable coming.
Large-scale grid failures.
Short. Grids are widely reliable in Europe, ready to accommodate demand increase and flexibility requirements due to higher renewables penetration. And also, what are the key investments in smart infrastructure? I think that there are absolutely the conditions for these to be enabled.
Large-scale artificial intelligence deployment in the retail power sector by 2025.
There may be privacy, data protection issues, but there are ways to address these. There are ways to address these that are definitely emerging.
And the last one, Serie A football campaign completed over the summer months.
This is the most uncertain because it depends on a virus. Anyway, I hope short, if not because my team would have no chance to win.
Thank you very much for being with us today, Giuseppe.
My pleasure, and thank you very much.